Cool, man. DJ EFN, man. Come on, welcome to Africa.
Thank you, brother.
Good. Is this your first time?
Yes, my first time.
Oh, dope. I was telling Heath that he'll probably have an entourage with him because that's the American way. Eh?
Well, we're doing the film, so this is the cast from the film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, but do you typically travel alone, or usually it's?
Nah, I usually travel with my friends. These are my friends
Right.
since high school, so we've been rolling together forever. They're like my brothers.
Oh, okay. So like you have a business inside that you run entirely as a group of friends, or how?
Yeah, basically.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's dope, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So there's so much we can talk about, but I want to first talk about since it's your first time, we can actually talk about that. Like, what were you expecting of Johannesburg before you came? You landed in Joburg, I suppose.
I wasn't trying to. I didn't want to set up expectations because I don't know if you follow the film series that I'm doing, but people were asking me, how much research do I do about the artist. I try to do as little research as possible,
right.
Or if I do it maybe at the last minute because I want to be surprised by what I come across, and I want it to be organic. I don't want to like seek out someone because they're popular or mainstream. I want it to be purely because of talent or because the artists themselves are like kind of like guiding us into certain directions of people that they feel are best representing the scene.
Right. And in terms of the impact what you want to have with the film, what are you trying to accomplish with that?
Well, with the whole film series, it's really to bring kind of like this awareness of how global hip hop is, the evolution of hip hop in different countries, how the different countries have adopted hip hop but then made it their own. And also kind of like teach something to the people in the States that, hip hop is global. There's more to hip hop than we're, understanding in our little bubble of hip hop. And we don't necessarily own it anymore. And we don't necessarily influence it around the world anymore as much as we used to.
Okay.
So I just feel people in the States should take note of that and appreciate it and actually get into the different scenes around the world, because even on a financial end, if you want to just purely talk about financial, not art, if we disconnect from the rest of the world, then we could potentially lose business also.
Right.
But on an artistic level, I think it's great that we just work together.
Yeah. So I feel like hip hop has a means different things to different people, right? For me, that's how I learned how to speak English, for example, right? That's how I learned how to do business, right? To me, it's more like an educational thing or an awakening to me. That's what it means to most of when I listen to music.
Right.
But I wonder, to an OG like you have been in the game for a long time, things change a lot more, but what does hip hop mean to you?
I mean, that's a loaded question because it changes probably even daily for me what hip hop means.
Okay.
But at its essence, just the feeling that I got as a young kid listening to hip hop and learning more and more about the culture and just feeling that it was a culture and not just a music culture, but an all embodying culture with its dance and slang and style of clothing and just all kinds of things, that I felt it was from my generation's thing. And I was like, I'm big into like history stuff, and I would love to watch like old like movies that always had soundtracks that kind of dated the movie. And you're like, oh man, they had they had their own music and they had their own vibe, the hippies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I felt that hip hop was that for my generation. So that feeling, I always wanted to kind of encapsulate it. And like I'm in high school, like in the early '90s and stuff, and it was just like for us it's like the golden era, we call it.
Yeah.
And it was just so dope that that's what I tried to do, encapsulate it by getting involved in the scene, getting my friends involved with us, like the crew, and we're here still today, and that's what it means to me. It's just like this feeling is what it is for me,
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes the feeling's not there anymore, but what's dope, it's like a drunk. You don't always get drunk the same way. You're always just seeking that special, that perfect moment when you've been drinking, you're just having a blast.
Yeah.
I'm always seeking that perfect vibe in hip hop, and every once in a while it's there, and it's like, this is why I got involved in the first place and why I'm here today.
So from its creation, it feels like from when hip hop started, the style of the clothing, the dance, the slang, some of those things are still there,
Right.
And even with the music, we still kind of keep some of those elements to this day, but a lot has changed.
A lot.
And for you to what you considered hip hop is not really what the younger dudes are doing today.
Absolutely.
It's very different.
Right.
The style of dressing, I can look at some of the dudes, they're still on the Air Force ones, today is different. So to you, that transition, how do you process that?
I mean, there's not really much you can do about it,
But do you still consider it is it still hip hop to you?
Yeah, look, to me, if motherfuckers are still rapping, it's hip hop.
Right.
Whether it's good or bad, that's subjective, up to each individual.
Right.
And that's what I try to tell everybody. Hip hop is like I said, if they're rapping, it's hip hop. Like that's the easiest way I could explain it.
Yeah.
So and then again, if it's bad or good, it's subjective, and you just like what you like, and that's it.
Right.
But I do think it's hip hop. I mean, has it been perverted by money and different things? Yeah, but it's still hip hop.
So let's talk about back in the day, where we can say the golden era. There was a lot of violence. We lost Biggie and Pac in there. And now the game has changed, as you can say. Like you said, there's a lot of money involved. And for a lot of younger people, even though, some could blame them that they're taking out the cloth of hip-hop a little bit, but they're still changing the game in terms of they kind of pay attention to things that most older dudes back then would have paid attention to, like the finance side of it. Do you think that aspect of it is not really getting credit?
Which
saying
aspect
that
again?
The aspect that they're now actually learning to build things on themselves, right? At least maybe the environment is different now because of the internet, but they're taking it on their own hands to create their own careers, which maybe their kind of financial well-being will last longer than the previous generation.
Right. Yeah, it's just the internet just changed the business model of releasing music, and maybe one can say all art. So it's changed, and the younger generation has been able to benefit more off of that change, and the older generation, which relied on kind of gatekeepers, record labels and industry people.
Yeah.
So, and to me, there's kind of, and this is too long to talk about, but there's pros and cons to both sides. Because in internet age, it's oversaturation.
Yes.
And back then, you had the gatekeepers, but then kind of like the gatekeepers, it's like you had to really be hungry to kind of get through as well. Mm-hmm. So there's pros and cons to both sides of it.
Yeah, and then when you travel now doing the show, what do you see that's most importantly when hip hop is kind of adopted in a certain place, whatever continent it is, that changes immediately. That's different in every city or country.
Well, what I've noticed in the beginning, they're trying to emulate the states,
right,
like perfectly. They're trying to emulate it, but eventually they just start to evolve and create a pride for their own identity, which is exactly what happened in the States, city by city, state by state. That happened there. So it's happening on a global scale. So when we go to Vietnam, they're now, instead of them maybe saying, oh yeah, I wish I was from New York or whatever, they're proud to be Vietnamese, and instead of looking to the States for influence and trends, they either look within themselves or look to the region, like Japan or Korea or something like that.
Okay,
and
wow.
That's what I'm noticing. Yeah.
That I've never thought of that before, probably because I haven't traveled much. And now with let's talk about Drink Champs. Hit show, great what you guys are doing. I wonder, where did you and Nori get together and be like, yo, let's start this show, and we're just gonna drink and talk shit?
Yeah, I mean, me and Nori started our friendship in around 96, 97.
Yeah.
He's from New York. I'm in Miami. It was a DJ artist relationship that we built. We became pretty cool, and eventually he moved to Miami, and he was working out of my studio in Miami. And so two parallel things were happening. We started in our crew. We were just big drinkers, and if you couldn't hang with us, you weren't a drink champ. We would make fun of you. So it was just a slogan, like a saying that we had, and that was just happening over here. It had nothing to do with me and Nori doing a show at that point. But me and Nori also started a show on satellite radio in the States on Sirius XM. And it sounds, and there's some clips of it on YouTube, and it looked like Drink Champs does today. We introduce ourselves the same way. We drink Tiger Bone, everything. So we stopped doing that. We did it for a couple of years, and then we both got busy doing other things. And I wanted to try to do that same kind of show again. And I got introduced to podcasting through a friend named Godfrey who did Gamertag Radio. And then I told Nori about it. He didn't know anything about podcasting.
Yeah.
So it took several years to convince Nori to want a podcast, and all different things happened in that time. And when he was ready, I told him, okay, well, I have a perfect name for it, Drink Champ. And at first he wasn't sold on it, but when he was really, really ready, he's kind of impatient. He's like, all right, let's just use that name. And I had the logo done, and the rest is history.
Cool. So now when you're friends and you're trying to build something, is one thing, right? You have an idea together, but now when you actually trying to take it to stage to create a platform, money is involved and things like that, contracts. How did you guys go to that level and negotiated whatever?
Well, it's funny because when we did our Sirius XM show, we didn't make a dime. It was just purely out of just having fun and promotional value.
Right.
When we got to do the podcast, I mean, we signed with CBS Radio, which sounded big at the time. We were both like, oh, maybe there's a chance of making some extra dollars doing this. But we didn't make a dime for 6 months when we started the podcast, Drink Champ. And it was successful right from the beginning, but they didn't know how to sell ads for our craziness. Yeah. And me and Nori, we basically shook hands and made a deal, between ourselves of how it was going to work. We both have ownership in it. We own it, together. And we signed the contract with CBS, and like I said, 6 months it took for us to start making money. And once the money came in, we had already agreed on our situation. We were partners, and and that's it. And it's been the same since. And
for you to move from CBS to Revolt, was that a financial deal, or
no?
It was just a hip hop thing?
It happened simultaneously. The CBS was strictly the audio podcast at one point. Then it became audio and then digital video, which was on YouTube, which they distributed for us. But then this documentary series that I'm here for, I had already got it on Revolt in 2013 when they launched.
Oh, okay.
It was our Cuba film, Coming Home Cuba. And I had been licensing them the films after that. This is my 6th film that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So the 4 previous, they had a license. So I already had a relationship with Revolt. And then Nori had relationships with some of the people at Revolt too, but I was already doing business with them.
Yeah.
So it was easy for that conversation to be had, and it was like, hey guys, would you like to take the podcast, like the TV, like a video version, and make it a TV version? And we're like, cool, let's try it. But so we were still having our audio podcast through CBS, and we made a deal for TV. So it was 2 different deals going on at the same time. We didn't stop doing the audio. Yeah. And then there's a TV version. And then now, fast forward, we did a multi-platform deal, which is kind of like a game changer in what we're doing. And
as a fan, and as many people as well on the show, they can comment and say, well, since you went that route, the content has starting to change a little bit. It seems like there are restrictions. So what were the things that were pointed out to you, like, hey guys, we can't not really do this anymore?
No, nobody ever said that to us, and I agree that stuff did change, because again, we didn't started thinking, neither of us thought this was gonna be like as big as it got. We were just like, we're just gonna do this on the side, but it became a behemoth, and it took all of our times to do it, and it became our main thing. Yeah. But we didn't expect that. So when we started, it was just like mics and and just in my old office, and of course, you're going to start to evolve. And then the TV version, they wanted to polish it up for TV and make it TV presentable. But they didn't ask us to change anything. So the people that say that, they're kind of wrong, but I understand where it's coming from, because they were used to like this gritty, thing that was the original Drink Champs. And then now it's like well lit. But all it is well lit now. But it's still the same craziness. Right. And the other thing that happened that kind of confused fans is our schedule started to change a lot, because then we had a TV schedule, and then we had an audio schedule, and they would change differently, and so people were confused as to when and where we were releasing, and it threw people off, and they were like blaming it on Revolt, like Puffy got you guys and changed everything. But that's absolutely not the case. And now the new deal that we have, it's really not the case, because we're weekly from now to who knows when, And how is it like working with Puff? Like, you all OGs, you and Nori, you've been in hip hop for a long time. And now, I like what Nori said on one of the podcasts, like, when I was coming up, I don't look up to Warren Buffett, I think with Puff. Right. So how does it feel like to work with somebody who actually understands the culture? Because for a lot of content creators in the States, even here, you end up in the hands of people who don't really understand the culture. Right. And that kind of changed things a little bit. I mean, I just think it's dope that it's like, in terms of hip hop, we're controlling, like the media now and the narrative, and Puff saw that, and his network saw it, and the people that work under him saw it, and he was able to see that ahead of other people. And now we have Puff, and we have Nas now as partner, and we have Jay-Z as a partner in a sense. You know? Yeah.
How does that work? Like, how do you partner with everyone?
We just, like I said, we did this new multi-platform deal that includes Tidal, Mass Appeal, which is Nas's company, and we're still with Revolt as the TV. So Tidal is a subscription base, so they get audio and video to their subscriber base.
Right.
And then Mass Appeal handles our audio podcast, which they sell ads on. Tidal will get it for a certain amount of time, like exclusive, then it'll go public.
Oh, right.
They sell ads on it, and then Revolt handles the TV portion and the video release on YouTube.
Oh, wow. That's a very
it's
sophisticated deal.
Yeah, it is, and it's the first time that these three guys, because they're part of these three companies, have actually worked together in this sense, in this way. So it's pretty monumental in hip hop, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Awesome. And one thing that I've realized, like you say, most of these guys are your friends, and it's an internal work that you guys do.
Right.
How did you set this up?
The deal?
No. How did you manage to say these are most of the guys you went to high school with, to the point that you're working together?
Here?
Yeah.
How did I set what up though exactly? Having them here
having kind of an internal economy, whereas you can stay friends, travel together, and also try eat together.
I mean, to be 100% realistic, when we started, the idea was to have make it in hip hop and make it in the music industry, make all this money. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
And as we continued to move forward, it did the amount of revenue we made didn't sustain everybody in the crew. It's more people than the people you see here. We had like 15 people in the crew at one point.
I can imagine.
So what happens is life is in reality kicked in, and some people are like, hey man, we're not making enough money to sustain all these people, so people go off and finish college, get careers. But we had such a tight knit group, and that was so passionate about what we were doing, is even if people went off to create, a living, they still were a part of what our company Crazy Hood was a part of, whether it was moral support or financial support or whatever they could contribute, they still wanted to be a part of the movement.
Yeah.
So whenever there's an opportunity to bring everybody together, to work together, we're always doing that within the company. But I mean, the reality is, like, anybody telling you that their whole entourage or their whole crew is doing all this stuff and they're all making a ton of money, usually that's not the case,
Right.
That's not reality.
Mm-hmm. So I asked that question because for a lot of young people in Africa, everybody feels like they have to be a rapper,
right?
To be able to kind of make this hip hop thing work. But what are other opportunities, especially right now, that there is just so much to do, that you think a lot of young people can take advantage of, other than just being a rapper,
Right. I mean, I think me and Nori are kind of like shedding light that you don't have to just be a rapper. You don't just have to be a DJ. You could start that way, but we just nobody would have thought that Nori would have been this big guy in media, or this DJ from Miami would have been next to Nori and would do deals with Jay-Z, Nas, and Puff. That's probably something no one would have thought of. That would happen. And what I think the example is that there's many avenues that you can be passionate about the music, but maybe you can't be a successful DJ or successful rapper. But there's so many things that you can do within the industry, and there's so many traits that you can pick up. And as the way I look at it, as long as it's relatable to your passion, there's sky's the limit. You can do whatever. My whole thing is when people kind of go from one extreme to the other extreme because they're like following a trend. That's where I feel like I don't understand why people would do that. But if you have a passion for something, look at the landscape and say, what can I do? Maybe could I be a podcaster, radio host, a DJ, or all of those things? Rapper, a singer, an engineer. You could be multiples of all those things.
Now, lastly, when you're in the States, things are different. There's a lot of things happening in the political side of things. And now when you move out of the US and you're traveling, what's the difference that you see in terms of what other people think about the US or the perception that America has in the rest of the world?
I mean, most people are like, fuck Trump, and we get it.
Yeah.
And I understand it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Trump personally, and the politics, when you see the geopolitics and the effect of historic things that have been happening from the West into the rest of the world. And when people travel, they don't kind of grasp an understanding of history, then you won't understand why there's sentiments around the world about certain things that the U.S. has done or the West or however you want to put it. And I try to have like historical context when I travel, and I try to like know a little bit about the background of any place that I go in terms of history.
Yeah.
And it kind of, and it makes it easier to understand, or see maybe where people might come at you in a certain way, and try to talk and have better dialogue. Like I want to have like try to have a worldly outlook,
right?
So that I could, I could just have a better dialogue with people when I'm in their country.
Mm-hmm. And going forward in the U.S. right now, what do you think is going to happen in the political landscape?
Oh man, me and my boy Charlie were talking about this. Unfortunately, I don't even want to speak truth to power, but I think that Trump might win again, and we're just gonna have to batten down the hatches and hope for the best for that roller coaster ride if it's another 4 years with him. But whoever wins, I mean, there's just a lot of work that we have to do in the U.S. to just repair a lot of damage, our own internal history, our history with the world, and and we have this thing now, like in the U.S., where you can't even talk bad about the U.S. and people in the U.S. say you're not a patriot. And I don't believe that. I believe a true patriot speaks, and says what they feel about their government, about their country, how it could be better. That's, to me, is a true patriot.
Right. One other question that I forgot to ask is that how do you see the DJ culture outside of the U.S. as far as hip hop? Because in the U.S., a DJ was the core, But now, if you go outside, it seems like it's mostly MC based without DJ. I don't know if you've noticed that outside.
It depends on the country. I mean, I feel that the DJ is more revered outside of the U.S. based on exactly what you were saying, because the DJ is the foundation, but there might not be as many people taking the art of DJing that serious. That I've noticed in our travels.
All right.
But there are plenty of international DJs and dope DJs. And the thing that happened in hip hop, that some of the greatest DJs in hip hop kind of, I don't know if they felt unappreciated, but they kind of, I don't know, it felt like the culture turned its back on like DJs and b-boys and even graph writers and all that. And so these guys were like, all right, cool. And some of the best DJs became like EDM and other styles and genres of music, and took it over there to make a living. But I feel there's a lot of really great DJs around the world. It's just the MC, just like everywhere else, it took center stage, and it kind of sucked all the energy or all the attention from all the other elements in hip hop.
I feel for producers as well that you can create a dope song and really it's only the MC who gets all the attention. So the same, I mean, back in the day was different with like Eric B and Rakim or Gangstar, but now you don't really get that dynamic anymore. It's always just the MC.
Yeah, so that's right.
Different times. But yeah, thanks so much for the chat, man. This was
a pleasure, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you for taking the time.
Awesome. Cheers.